Even though there's a lot of content to do in BDO, you ever get just so bored you want to do something different and nostalgic? I had one of those moments lately where I was just so overwhelmed by all the different things I could choose to do in the game and kinda sick of Oryx, so I decided, okay, where can I go? What can I do? What can I grind that I haven't been to in a while? Crescents. Easy, I'll do an enhancing video. Everyone told me I was nuts for grinding Crescents, but then PA released that pen accessory event. And luckily, PA announced pretty early into my grind about the accessory event, so I was able to focus on just trying to get enough rings to enhance for try. Before I did eventually get bored of grinding Crescents to move on to Season and tapping my Peggy, I grinded 13 hours, and I did spend a lot of time on the side fighting. Keep watching to see all my stats and how my progress on the pen accessory event is going. If your enhancing RNG sucks like mine and you don't have 50 bill lying around for a pen accessory, this long-term project is perfect. Just by stocking up some mats and doing a daily, you can get a pen crescent, narc, or tongue guard earring in just a few months. This is my favorite infographic that's been floating around the internet, and it has all the mats you need for the free pen accessory. However, the totals at the top aren't including the full Burning Moonlight Blackstones that you get from Jatina. You'll really only need to craft like 152. You can obtain the daily quest for the Burning Moonlight Blackstone powder from Jatina in all major cities. The combat daily gives 2 powders, and the life dailies give 1. But besides all these mats, you'll need the try accessory of your choosing to enhance using these special stones. There is a special rotation that they added a couple years ago called the Possessed Crescents. So if you come from the north side, from the desert side, and you see that Achman wheel, and you go right up the hill instead of going towards the Crescent node manager, you can get to this new rotation. They don't drop trash loot, they don't drop scrolls, but they do have a pretty good increased rate for dropping soileds and crescent rings themselves. I didn't do enough time here though to get any data in my spreadsheet. The possessed crescents are fairly tankier than regular crescents, but at 273 Kudum, it wasn't an issue. They didn't hit very hard. I never felt like I was going to die or was losing HP even. So if you don't care about trash loot or the scrolls, and you're really just going for the soileds and the ring, this is the perfect rotation for you. Okay, so I grinded 12 different hours at Crescents, and you can tell at about hour 10 is when they released the Pen Accessory event because I was no longer able to play on Arsha. It was just too contested and it was disrupting my grind. If anyone remembers what happened to the Crescent market, everyone was in a panic. They were buying out Crescents. They shot from like 30 mil to 90 mil. Everything sold out. There were no tries on the market. And then about 4 days they went back to normal. For the 2 hours that I did not grind on Arsha, I tried to make up for it by using the 50 mil tent buff. 7 of my hours I grinded with a blue loot scroll, and then for the other 5 I used a gold scroll. The big numbers that I recorded were my solid ring drops, including any drops from a Fwaru, soiled ring drops, any of those rings that passed, and then how many Peel of Face scrolls I got. None of my hours were done in the possessed rotation, they were all done at normal Crescents where they drop the trash loot. Since I used many different loot buffs for each hour, I had to come up with a way to standardize the data, so I used different modifiers. To calculate my rings, I did pure ring drop plus ring pass divided by the modifier. Soileds was how many soileds divided by the modifier, and then scrolls was how many scrolls I got divided by the modifier. I continued to calculate the average for each of those numbers. The average of a sample is x equal to the sum of all data points divided by the sample size. So for my ring average per hour, it was 0.26. My average soileds per hour was 4.25, and my average scrolls per hour was 3.38. Again, all this data is standardized based on modifiers since I used different loot buffs during my grind. I then continued to calculate the standard deviation. So the standard deviation of a sample is equal to the square root of the sum each value x minus, and I forgot my mean line, minus little x, the mean of the sample size squared divided by the sample size minus 1. And in a perfect world, when we're calculating statistics and doing hypotheses, our sample size n would be at least 30, but I'm sorry guys, I was really not going to spend 30 hours at Crescents just so I could be able to say that my data was statistically correct. So the standard deviation of data is how far on either side of the mean any given data point deviates. Think of it like testing percentiles, like you tested in the 90th percentile, you were above 90% of the other test takers. So to give you all a visualization of how the means and the standard deviations would look, I had to normalize some of the data. To do this, I had to create a normal distribution or a bell curve, which is a population density graph. And you may have seen it, especially if you took stats in high school or college. It looks a little something like this. And your mean goes right in the middle. And then you can see your standard deviations on either side of the mean to figure out your percentiles. You can do this by hand, but I found a very helpful step-by-step video on YouTube. I've linked it in the description in case you too have to make a normal distribution on Excel. I found it very handy. So here is my normal curve for crescent rings over my 12 hours. Right here in the middle is my average. There weren't many videos that I could find where other people went and they put their statistics, they put their hourly averages for rings, soileds, and peel-of-face girls, but I did find a couple. The Fantastic Mr. Duodecil posted in 2018. His ring average per hour was 0.25. In his video, there was something about there was a patch that affected some sort of drop rate while he was doing his data collection. So that is a variable to keep in mind with my data and these other videos, is that there's probably been a lot of patches and loot drop changes, and I don't know either what loot buffs that Duodecil or Mini Trigger were using. Mini Trigger in 2017 had an average ring drop rate per hour of 0.6, so Duodecil's right here on my mean. And then Mini Trigger's average was a little bit higher. Using those same two videos, here is the normal distribution for how many soileds I got per hour. So you can see my mean is way up here at a little over 4 per hour, and Duodecil is down here with 1.4, and Mini Trigger is down here with 1.3. That's a pretty big leap in the data, so I wish I had more information about why there's this huge variation and why they're all the way down at the bottom end of my distribution. But I think it can only be really accounted for if I knew what buffs they were running and what has popped up in the patch notes since that may have affected drop rates. And so for my last graph, I have the distribution of how many peel-of-face scrolls I got per hour. So my average is a little over 3 right up here. Duodecil got about 4.4 an hour, and Mini Trigger got about 4.6. So as you can see, those two are just a little bit above my mean. Again, I don't know if this is something where there was a patch that affected drop rates, maybe drop rates for the scrolls have been lowered since, or more likely than that, I just got very sidetracked fighting people, and I just did not grind as efficiently as they did. So if you didn't want to watch my stats video about how I got here, I grinded 12 hours. I used modifiers to account for the huge differences in all the different loot buffs I was using. My average ring per hour was 0.26, my average soiled per hour was 4.25, and each hour I got approximately 3.38 peel-of-face scrolls. This is my progress so far in the pen accessory event. I've already tapped my Crescent, and I'm struggling a little bit with the burning powder because I keep forgetting to do the daily quests. But I've been grinding a lot of orcs and castle runes in order to get those magical shards and the blackstones. But Yona fragments is gonna be kind of difficult. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments what accessory that you're going for and how your progress is coming along so far.